For sure. So we really think there's three basic kinds. Now I know, guys, we're in different states. So we're talking to people here in Indiana, we're talking to people here in West Virginia, Kentucky, Michigan, Ohio. So it varies a little bit from state to state. So we're going to do this a little broader. So it may be called a little different in your own market, and your own professionals can explain it to you. But there's really kind of three different levels. Why don't you go through that? So, guys, this is really all about when someone asks you, what's the difference or why do I need this? This is what we want you to understand. So this is important so you understand the different levels. So why don't you go ahead and talk about kind of like what we call the standard owner policy.
So what we did is highlighted some of the most important parts of the policies that we're going to talk about. And the first one with the standard owner's policy is you got to have access to your property. If you don't have access to your property, how do you get it? How do you get there? That just means that you have a right to get to your property, whether it's walking from a main street. It doesn't say you have a driveway. It doesn't
Guys,
say
when you learned all that stuff in
Yes.
class about easements,
Yes.
et cetera, et cetera.
Correct.
That's
Correct.
That's exactly what we're talking about. So look at that.
Fraud coverage, because there's other documents that are recorded in the chain of title, and we cover fraud coverage. So that's very important to the buyer to make sure that everything's been good. Gap coverage. This is counties are a little bit behind in the time frame that they get closings or documents recorded anymore. Used to be a long time. It's not as much now that we have electronics. So this covers between the time you buy and close to the time it's recorded. If something pops up in that middle section, your title policy is going to cover you.
I mean, there's times when it's been months behind or weeks behind. Something could get recorded in between.
Correct.
So it protects you doing that.
It does. Third party claims. Example, ex-husband comes and says, I didn't get paid off in the divorce. You sold my house and didn't pay me. Prior liens and claims of interest, that's if, the prior owners that already sold to the current seller maybe has a lien that's still showing up. We're going to make sure that all that stuff is covered and any claim of interest that pops up.
Second mortgage or something.
Second mortgage, equity loans. And you're going to get insurable title for the future. Your buyer's going to have an insurable title so that they can stand on that when they go to list their house, either 2 months, 2 years, 20 years down the line.
And depending on your state, you can actually get credit for some of those too.
Yes,
right?
some states give credit within a certain period of time, but it's based state to state on whether that's done.
That's awesome. So tell us a little bit about lender's insurance, because some people say, well, the lenders, why do I need anything? The lender's insured. They protect them. We must be protected. Yes. So tell us a little bit of difference between the lenders.
It covers losses only to the lender. And of course, the buyers pay for it because it's part of your closing costs that you were quoted on your good faith estimate. Purchaser pays the premium. A lender's coverage is comparable to a standard policy. And the lender's coverage, if the lender takes the property back, now they have a policy that covers them also.
Yeah, but it limits to the lender.
Correct.
Okay,
only to the lender.
So when we kind of move up, we talk what we call the extended, sometimes Eagle policies, and expanded policies. So why don't you tell a little bit difference between those?
Okay. So expanded policy has quite a few different, and we're just going to highlight a few here because there's too many to go over, but we'll have pamphlets that people can pick up. They cover post-policy coverage. Title insurance covers for defects in the past, not in the future. I don't know if you're going to deed to Uncle Joe and ignore your ex-husband in the future. So we don't insure what's happening in the future, except on an expanded policy. There are a few different ones that cover you in the future. The biggest one and most important one, Phil, is houses increase in value, correct?
Yeah, exactly right.
With an expanded policy, it increases 150% of the face value of your policy over the next 5 years.
So guys, what this means. Think about the markets we've been in, where there's houses have been appreciating. Depending on that, it could be 20% a year or greater in some places or not. But as it increases in value, if you don't get the expanded policy and you bought your house for $200,000. But now it's worth $250,000, it's not going to cover that increase. It would only cover the initial. So for small amount more, you get way more benefit, really.
More coverage. Boundary line disputes after post policy. Let's say the neighbor builds they're building their shed on your property. We're going to help with that. Ownership claims. Somebody comes up and says, I own the property. Get out of my house. You're covered on that. We're going to defend you. Forgery or impersonating affecting title. So if somebody impersonates you and sells your property while you're on vacation, that's going to be covered. Now, some of the expanded policy coverages that are post closing coverages, they do have limits and they do have deductibles, but those are all listed in the brochures
Yeah.
and in the title
And
commitment.
so you have to, generally, we're not
Correct.
to what level, but those are, and these are just real things now, right?
Yes. And I see.
we could tell
see-
horror stories.
I could tell you. I could sit here and tell you stories for 2 hours.
So guys, it's that expand when they say why, and this is what we kind of always talk about. If you look at our buyer's advisory under title insurance, and it talks about title insurance. It says title insurance insures the purchaser against defects that may arise as a result of information that's not a matter of record. And these other options we talked about. And also, millions of dollars in claims are paid out every year in title insurance claims. It's recommended by Key Realty that all purchasers obtain this. And it's because for that little bit of extra money, guys, you get so much more coverage. And what you don't want is a problem. And they say, well, why didn't you get it? My agent told me I didn't need it. And that's why it's in the buyer's advisory.
Yes.
Okay, guys, we want to protect you, but in the same token, it protects your clients.